All right, welcome to another deep dive. You guys sent in this interview with Gillie Kid,
Oh, yeah,
and wow, there's a lot to unpack here. It goes way beyond music.
absolutely.
We're talking music industry, we're talking business deals, and like a lot about just staying true to yourself.
Like when you look at this interview, it's not just about one rapper's journey. It's like looking into how an entire industry works.
Right.
Yeah, you see those power dynamics, how careers are made and broken, and how people can be successful.
On their own terms, even with challenges.
Exactly, even when it's tough.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. One of the first things that really stood out to me was when Gillie was talking about this the Lave deal. He said Jay-Z and Dave Dash
Oh, yeah.
wanted to sign his group Major Vegas, but Gillie turned it down.
Big time.
Why would he call it a slave deal?
Well, he felt like the terms were totally unfair to the artists
Okay.
and really favored the label.
Mm-hmm.
They would have had almost no control or potential for profit. Think about it. You have these young artists, they're hungry, they're ready to make it big, and then they're given these contracts that sound, amazing.
Right.
But when you look closely, there are all these clauses that can lock them in for years.
He actually said they'd have to sell like a quadrillion records to just break even.
Right.
He might have exaggerated a little there, but you get the point.
I get it.
It sounds like they were trying to take advantage of him.
Yeah, and this kind of thing has been happening for a long time. The music industry has a history of these exploitative contracts.
Really?
Especially with young artists who might not have lawyers or who don't really understand how these deals work. One thing that's a big part of this feeling of exploitation is the idea of points.
Can you break down points for us? Why are they so important in these deals?
Of course. So points basically represent the artist's share of the money made from their music.
So like royalties.
It's a royalty system, yeah. The percentage of points that the artist negotiates determines how much of the profit they get.
Makes sense.
So a higher percentage obviously means they get more money, which is super important for their financial, well-being and their long-term success.
So if we're talking about Gillie, it sounds like he felt the percentage of points offered was so bad that even if they became incredibly successful,
Right.
his group would hardly see any of the money.
Exactly. It all comes down to power dynamics. Big labels, they have a lot of power, especially when they're dealing with new artists who just want to get signed. But Gillie's story shows us how important it is to understand every part of a contract.
Yeah.
To know what you're worth. Sometimes walking away from a deal, even when it looks good, is the smartest thing you can do.
It's got to be tough, though, especially when you're just starting out.
For sure.
And that leads us to his claim about being blackballed after he said no to the deal. That's a pretty serious thing to say. Do you think artists can really be shut out of opportunities by people with power in the industry?
That's a tough one. It's a complicated issue. Blackballing is like when someone is systematically excluded, it's often a way of punishing them.
Wow.
And while it's hard to prove, it's something that a lot of people believe happens in the music industry.
And other industries too, probably, right?
Oh, yeah, in lots of places.
He tells this story about being blacklisted from MTV after giving a very raw and real interview. He even says someone from Universal might have called to pressure MTV.
That's a big deal.
If that's true, it's kind of scary to think how much power these big labels can have behind the scenes.
Yeah, it raises a lot of concerns about whether big labels can actually influence what people see and hear and control which artists get to be successful. Now, it's hard to know if what Gillie described really happened the way he said it did.
Right.
But it does seem like something that could happen in the music industry. It makes you think about how artists need to understand the power structures and be ready to work in a system that isn't always fair or transparent.
So even if you're talented and driven, you could still hit roadblocks if you don't play by their rules.
You got it. The music industry, like any industry really, has its own gatekeepers, power brokers, and unwritten rules. Talent is important, but it might not be enough. Gillie's story tells us that you need to be smart about the business side of things, you need to be resilient, and you need to stand up for yourself, even when you're up against powerful people.
It's a lot to deal with. It makes you wonder how anyone makes it.
Definitely.
But Gillie didn't let these challenges stop him. He talks about hustling and staying true to himself to find success.
That's it. He's a fighter. Gillie's story isn't just a warning. It shows how resilience and being authentic can lead to success, even with all the obstacles. He talks about how some people in the industry only care about appearances and connections that aren't real,
Okay.
instead of focusing on real relationships and working hard.
He even straight up says all of that S is fake. Like all the parties and events, the whole scene.
Yeah, like he sees right through it.
Yeah. He seems to really get what it takes to build a career that lasts in music or any field. He focuses on hard work, genuine relationships, and using what makes you unique to your advantage.
And that's good advice for everyone. We live in a world obsessed with image.
Right.
And Gillie shows us that real success comes from building something real, not chasing what's popular.
He even talks about protecting his brand. He said, I don't let nobody allowed to use my brand with their brand. He's not just talented, he's a smart businessman. He knows how powerful his platform and image are.
Absolutely, and that's a big part of why he's successful. He's not just relying on talent, he's making smart decisions
Yeah.
and building a brand that goes beyond just music. Lots of artists today are doing this. They want to control their own careers and be successful in the long run.
That brings us to his podcast, $1,000,000 Worth of Game. It seems like he's found a way to use everything he's been through, good and bad, to create this platform where he can speak his mind and connect with his audience and, even help other artists.
It shows how the music industry is changing. Artists like Gillie are finding success outside the traditional system.
Really?
They use podcasts and social media to build their own audience and tell their own stories. The rise of independent artists, owning your masters, and how digital tools give power back to creators, it's all there in Gillie's journey.
And the thing that I find really inspiring is that he doesn't just want success for himself. He wants to use his influence to support new artists.
Yeah.
And he's even thinking about buying back the masters of artists who've been taken advantage of.
It's a real thing and attitude, moving away from the every man for himself way of thinking.
Right.
Gillie wanting to help others and make things fairer shows that maybe things are changing for the better, that artists might have more control and a real say in how the industry works.
It's pretty incredible to think that he went from feeling taken advantage of early in his career to now being in a position to maybe help others avoid those same experiences.
Full circle, for sure.
Yeah, it really is. And that actually leads us to something else interesting, how he sees Cash Money Records and Birdman. These are people who've been big the industry,
Huge.
but they also have a kind of messy past.
For sure.
Right. He recognizes they're good at what they do, even though he doesn't necessarily agree with them personally. What are your thoughts on Cash Money Records and what they've done in the music world, like the good and the bad?
To really get it, we have to look back at where they came from. Cash Money started in New Orleans in the 90s.
Okay.
Founded by the Williams brothers, Birdman and Slim. They were a big deal. They brought this unique Southern sound to the mainstream.
I remember when they signed Lil Wayne. He was so young, but you could see how talented he was. And then, of course, came Drake and Nicki Minaj becoming superstars.
Totally.
They definitely knew how to find and develop talent.
Their list of artists is like a hall of fame. They really shaped the sound and culture of music. And Birdman, he became a legend, known for his business skills, living large, and his unwavering belief in the Cash Money brand.
But there's also a darker side to their story. There were a lot of claims about artists not being paid fairly,
Right.
contracts being bad, and just a lack of transparency in how they did business. I think Gillie is kind of hinting at this when he talks about them.
You're picking up on it. That's where it gets complicated. They were really successful, but there were always these accusations of exploitation and shady practices. This tension between how much they influenced music and the controversies about their business. It's something that comes up a lot in this industry. It makes you think about the cost of success, the power dynamics, and how ethical those in power should be.
It's a reminder that even in a creative world like music, there's this darker side, a struggle for control, money, and fairness.
Exactly. And that's why it's important to talk openly about these things, about what artists go through and how we can make the industry more transparent and fair. Gillie being so honest about his experiences and his vision for a better future is a big part of that conversation.
He's definitely not afraid to speak his mind, even about powerful people like Birdman. There's a sense of honesty in his approach that I think people connect with.
Totally agree. What's interesting is that he can recognize the good things Birdman has done,
Yeah.
but still be critical of how he did them. He's not just praising or condemning. He's looking at things from both sides.
He gets that success, especially in a world as competitive as music. It can be a double-edged sword. Fame and fortune can come with a price, both personally and professionally.
And that's something we can all learn from in any field. Success isn't always straightforward. There will be tough times.
Yeah.
And it's really important to stay true to your values and what you want to achieve.
I think this is a good spot to pause for a moment and think about what we've talked about. We've gone deep into the music industry's power dynamics, the dangers of bad contracts, and the resilience of artists like Gillie who speak their truth. We've also looked at the complicated legacy of people like Birdman and Cash Money Records.
It's been a fascinating journey so far.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to dive deeper into Gillie's ideas in the next part of our deep dive. We'll talk more about his vision for empowering artists,
Okay.
his thoughts on how the music industry is changing, and why it's so important for artists to own their work and their legacy.
Sounds like there's still a lot to uncover.
For sure.
Be sure to join us next time for part 2 of our deep dive into the world of Gillie the Kid. We'll keep exploring these valuable lessons about business, creativity, and making your own path to success no matter what you do.
Before we jump into the future of the music industry, I think we should talk about something Gillie said that's important for anyone building a career.
Okay?
It's about having people who support you.
Okay?
He talks about how when he was going through all this stuff, he would talk to his cousin Wallow, who was in prison at the time.
Right.
Wallow didn't believe him at first about the blackballing thing.
Right. He thought Gillie was just making excuses for not being successful.
Yeah, exactly.
But then when Wallow got out and they started going around in the industry together, they actually ran into people who confirmed Gillie was on a blacklist.
It just shows you that even when you're sure about what you've experienced, having people who can back you up is really important.
Makes sense.
The music industry, like any industry, can be a lonely place.
Yeah, especially when you're facing challenges or trying to do things differently.
Exactly.
Having a good support system, whether it's family, friends, mentors, or colleagues, can make all the difference.
Totally. They can offer guidance, encouragement, and most importantly, help you stay focused on what you want to achieve.
And speaking of goals, Gillie is very open about his ambition to change the industry for the better.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about buying back the masters of artists who have been taken advantage of.
That's a big move.
It is. What do you think about owning your masters, particularly in today's music world?
It's crucial. Owning your masters means you have control over your music, your financial future, and your legacy.
Right. It's about making sure that artists, not just corporations, benefit from their work for years to come.
And it's something that's getting more and more attention as artists realize their rights and their power.
It's definitely a hot topic. We're seeing a shift toward artists demanding more ownership and control over their music, especially with independent distribution and streaming platforms.
Yeah, Gillie even jokes about making a Michael Jackson move and outbidding everyone to get those masters.
I love how he brings humor into it. He's serious about his goals, but he doesn't take himself too seriously.
Yeah, it makes him relatable.
It does.
It's that mix of ambition, humor, and authenticity that makes him so interesting.
Definitely. He's not just talking. He's actually working to make a difference.
Exactly.
And his commitment to helping other artists is really inspiring.
It is.
He wants to use his influence to guide and support new artists and help them avoid the mistakes he made.
It's a powerful vision for a fair industry.
It really is.
It aligns with this growing movement for more transparency, fairness, and artist empowerment. We're seeing more artists taking control of their careers, building their own brands, and getting better deals.
Gillie's story is proof of what's possible when you have talent, drive, and the guts to challenge the system.
Absolutely. It's interesting to compare Gillie's approach with the traditional way of making it in music.
How so?
For so long, it was all about getting signed to a major label.
Right.
But Gillie seems to be saying that's not the only way, and maybe not even the best way anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. The industry's changing so fast.
Streaming platforms, independent distribution, or social media have given artists so many more options.
That's true.
They can build their own fan base, connect directly with people, and create their own opportunities without needing those big labels.
Gillie's podcast is a perfect example.
Exactly. He built a platform where he can say what he thinks, connect with his audience, and make money on his own terms.
That was much harder to do in the past.
It was. It shows how important it is to adapt and be entrepreneurial artists. Today need to be more than just musicians.
Right.
They need to be business-savvy content creators and community builders. Gillie embodies this new kind of artist who knows how to use different platforms and build a brand that's bigger than just music.
And he's not afraid to call out the things he sees as wrong with the industry.
Right, like how it focuses on appearances and superficiality.
Yeah, the constant chase for fame and fortune that often comes at the cost of real creativity and genuine connections.
He calls it all fake.
He does. He makes a good point.
It's something you hear from artists who have made it and have seen how the industry really works.
Right.
They understand that it can be a trap where image is more important than substance.
It's easy to get caught up in that, especially when you're young and ambitious.
Absolutely.
But Gillie is saying there's a different way.
Right.
One that's based on authenticity, hard work, and dedication to your craft.
He's found success on his own terms by staying true to himself and building a career that reflects his values.
It's inspiring to see someone achieve success without sacrificing their integrity or who they are.
It is, and his willingness to be open about his struggles, his lessons, and his vision is inspiring for artists and entrepreneurs alike.
He's paving his own way, and it's exciting to see where he goes next.
Speaking of his journey, there's another part of his story that's worth talking about, his personal growth.
Okay?
He talks about how at 48 years old, he doesn't have time for dumbness anymore.
I can relate to that.
He's focused on his family, his businesses, and his legacy. He's reached a point of maturity and self-awareness that's shaping his decisions and his outlook on life.
He even compares himself to a boxer, saying, if I'm getting in the ring with you, bro, I'm not throwing jabs. I'm throwing jabs and hooks and uppercuts. I'm trying to get you out of here. But he also admits that as he's gotten older, he's learned to choose his battles and focus on what really matters.
That's something a lot of people experience as they get older. You realize that not every fight is worth it. And sometimes it's better to save your energy for the things that align with your values and your goals.
Gillie seems to have found that balance. He's still ambitious and driven, but he's more thoughtful about how he spends his time and energy.
That's wisdom. It's about understanding that success isn't just about reaching your goals, it's also about living a meaningful life that reflects what's important to you.
Gillie's story reminds us that success is a journey, not a destination. It's about what we learn along the way, the relationships we build, and how we impact the world.
And it's a journey that's always changing. Gillie is still writing his story, and it'll be interesting to see how he continues to influence the music industry and inspire others.
He's definitely someone to keep an eye on. But before we move on to Gillie's vision for the industry, I think we should take a moment to think about what we've learned so far. What are some of the key takeaways for our listeners?
That's a good question. One of the biggest takeaways from Gillie's story is knowing your worth. Whether you're an artist, an entrepreneur, or just someone figuring out their career, you have to understand your value and be confident in getting what you deserve.
He definitely didn't settle when he walked away from that slave deal.
Nope. And that decision set him on a path to success on his own terms.
It did. It shows how important it is to believe in yourself and be willing to walk away from things that don't feel right.
Sometimes the best deals are the ones you don't make.
Another big takeaway is resilience. Gillie faced so many challenges, accusations of blackballing, industry politics, and pressure to conform. But he never gave up. He kept going, improving his skills, building his brand, and creating his own opportunities.
His story shows us that we'll all face setbacks, but it's how we react that matters. Resilience is about having the toughness to bounce back, to learn from mistakes, and to keep going even when it's hard.
And Gillie's story also shows how important it is to be yourself.
Authenticity.
Yes, in an industry obsessed with image, he stayed true to who he is, his values, and his vision. He built a career that reflects him and that resonates with his audience.
It's a powerful reminder that in a world full of noise and fakeness, being genuine is a huge advantage. People can tell when you're real, and they connect with that.
So we've talked about knowing your worth, resilience, and authenticity. What else stands out to you as a key takeaway from Gillie's journey?
The power of relationships. Gillie talks about needing a good support system, people you can trust to guide you through the industry's challenges. And he's also shown how important it is to give back and use his platform to help others.
He's not just thinking about himself. He's working to make the industry better for everyone, a place where artists have more control, ownership, and a voice.
It's inspiring. It shows that success isn't just about personal achievements, it's also about the positive impact you have on others. Gillie's story is proof that you can use your platforms to lift people up, empower them, and inspire them.
That's a great transition into the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore Gillie's vision for the music industry's future.
I'm looking forward to that. Gillie's perspective is honest, insightful, and I think he offers valuable lessons for artists and anyone who wants to make the world a better place.
We've talked about Gillie's journey, his thoughts on the industry, and all the things he's learned. What I'm really interested in is his vision for the future. He's not just about making it himself. He wants to change the whole game. What are some of the big things he sees for a fairer music industry?
He's all about ownership. He talks about how important it is for artists to own their masters, control their work, and actually get the money they deserve. It's about shifting the power from these corporations back to the creators.
He talks about how owning your masters means that your family, your kids, even future generations can benefit from what you've created. It's about building something that lasts and making sure that artists are taken care of not just when they're hot, but for their whole life.
It's a big idea. He's basically saying artists should have more say in their careers, both creatively and financially. It's about making sure they get paid fairly, not just when they're popular, but over time.
And he's not all talk. He's actually putting his money where his mouth is, talking about buying back the masters of artists who've been taken advantage of. He's not just complaining. He's actually trying to do something about it.
It shows that he's thinking about everyone, not just himself. He wants to make things fairer, where artists have the power to get better deals and build careers that last.
It's almost like he wants to create a music industry where everyone works together to support each other.
Yeah, he talks about using his platform to guide new artists and help them avoid the mistakes he made.
He's been there, done that, and now he wants to help the next generation. It shows his character and how much he wants to make things better.
It's something we're seeing more and more in the industry. Artists are demanding more transparency, better contracts, and more control. Independent distribution, streaming, and social media have given them more power.
They don't have to rely on the big labels anymore. They can reach their fans, tell their stories, and build their own businesses.
Gillie's podcast is a perfect example. He created a space where he can say what he wants, connect with people, and make money on his own. It's inspiring other artists to find different ways to succeed.
So what does Gillie's vision mean for you, the listener? Even if you're not a musician, What can you take away from his story and what he's saying?
It's about questioning the way things are. Gillie didn't just accept the industry, he wanted something different. That idea of pushing back and wanting change is important everywhere, not just in music.
He reminds us that we don't have to just go along with things. We can use our voices, our platforms, and our actions to make things fair no matter what we do.
Another thing is ownership and control. Gillie talks about owning your work and being in charge of your creative output. We all have the right to own what we create, benefit from it, and shape our own futures.
It's about taking charge of your work, your career, your life. It's about making smart choices and building a future that reflects who you are and what you want.
And Gillie's story also shows how important community is. He's not just focused on himself, he's all about making the industry better for everyone. He knows that real change happens when we work together.
We can all support artists, stream their music, buy their merch, and speak up for fairer practices. We can all be part of making a better music world.
That's what the deep dive is all about. We explore these stories and ideas not just to entertain, but to inspire, to make you think, and to encourage you to do something.
Gillie the Kid's story is a powerful reminder that we can all make a difference. We can challenge the system, take control of our lives, and work together to create a world where creativity is valued. Artists have power, and everyone has the chance to succeed.
I think that's a great place to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Gillie the Kid's world. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Keep exploring these ideas, challenge the way things are, and use your voice to make a positive impact.
Until next time, keep diving deep.